If you're a residential real estate agent and you want to close over $1 million a year, but you're currently struggling with residential, this one video will change your business forever. And that's talking about commercial real estate, but not switching to commercial real estate, adding it in to your residential business. Today, I'm bringing on my good friend Henry, who previously was struggling as a residential agent. Then he started tapping into the power of being a resi-mercial agent or a residential and commercial agent, and his commission exploded. He now closes multiple seven figures every single year by adding this into his business. And for the first time ever, he's not only revealing how to find and close your first commercial deal, which by the way pays a lot more than a residential deal, but more importantly, he explains at the end the critical mistakes that you need to avoid in order to do this successfully. This is one of the biggest opportunity for residential agents right now, and nobody's talking about it. So two quick things before we're getting started. Number one, Henry has a ton of incredible content on this side of the business. I will link his content below. And number two, he's also an incredible coach, and I will link his calendar below in case you would like to chat with him for free about getting his support for free to add this into your business, to put you on the path to building a seven-figure real estate business. So without further ado, let's bring on Henry and talk all things resi-mercial or residential and commercial real estate and how this could be your golden ticket to building the business of your dreams. All right, Henry, so super excited to have you on here, man, and to talk about something you and I have been jamming out about for quite some time, which is this massive, seemingly untapped opportunity of commercial and residential agents being able to capitalize on that, because I think a lot of them treat it as two mutually exclusive different worlds without realizing what it can actually do to scale their business and future-proof it, as we're going to dive into. So for anybody that doesn't know who you are, I know you've got a big brand, but give yourself a quick rundown, who you are, where you're from, and what got you into commercial in the first place.
Yeah, man. So obviously, first and foremost, thanks for having me on here. Appreciate you a lot. So my career started off being actually kind of quote unquote conned about getting into the industry. Funny enough, somebody lied to me drastically about how much money they were making in the real estate business, and I was like, "Wow, this guy's making this kind of money. I can make that kind of money. Let's go." So I quit my corporate job at the time, even before I had my real estate license. I know I just had it to lock in, and I actually started on the residential side of the business. So my first year was terrible. I think I didn't make my first dollar until my 11th month in the business. I finally closed my first deal, and then another one in my 12th month. So I made like not even $30,000 in my first year in real estate. My second year in real estate, I made like 40 grand. And I'm like, screw it. I hate this industry. This industry sucks. I'm done. Throwing in the towel. And I started every single type of business you could possibly imagine. Drop shipping, e-com, consulting, marketing, you name it. I tried it. And the problem was I didn't have the stick to it mentality. And I was sort of just like trying to make as much money as I can, as fast as I can. And I wasn't focused on building an actual business. So I went to a Tony Robbins event, changed everything. And he was like, hey, just focus on one thing for a decade. And I was like, I can do that. And that ended up being real estate, because it was the only time I ever made any money. So once I made that commitment, I said, hey, I'm going to do this until just become successful. Like, I'm a big fanatic of do it until X happens, right? Like everyone's just like, well, how many of this should I do? I'm like, do it until X occurs, right? Like it's not like there's not a flat number you should be doing. And within 30 months, I was doing $100,000 a month in residential sales. So between 8 and 12 transactions a month. And then after doing a little over $1 million in GCI for a few years, I got referred my first commercial deal ever. I actually never, at the very beginning of my career, I kind of thought I wanted to get into commercial. Didn't end up being that. And I got referred a commercial deal and I made $100,000 on the deal. I double ended it, and I was making 100 a month and, selling 8 or 12 or 14 houses or something, and made 101 deal, dude. And I was like, there is something to this and I need to figure it out. And now exclusively only doing commercial. I'm the number one commercial agent with EXP right now. So, it's been an incredible journey, with the transition.
That's incredible, man. And I'm really excited to dive into it, especially from your perspective, because there's seemingly this perception that commercial is like an old boys club. It's everyone's older. It's very slow. There's not much opportunity. It takes years to be able to break into it. And I know that you've been able to prove that wrong. And so I'm excited that first, maybe let's give some context as to that opportunity for residential agents, because I think some people hear commercial, they get the opportunity, but they have this, dilemma. Do I stay in residential? Do I go full tilt commercial? And they kind of think that they have to. I'd love for you to kind of give some context as to the opportunity 2026 and beyond, and what residential agents could do to start to add that to their arsenal of tools.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of becoming a dynamic agent, right? Like where you can take down any type of opportunity that comes across your plate, right? I think that obviously for those individuals who want to build a sustainable business, focus is definitely a huge aspect of it, right? Like, obviously, if you want to build something massive, more likely than not, I like the idea of focus. And at the same time, the problem is for a lot of people, based on your geographic location, it might be very difficult to sell hundreds of homes in your geographic location, right? It just might be difficult for you to hit a 7-figure year based on where you live. So, with the opportunity that commercial has where you can do both, the duality and becoming a dynamic agent, like being able to handle anything that comes across your plate can give you a much higher likelihood of crossing the, maybe mid or high 6-figure, if not 7-figure mark, no matter your geographic location, right? And yes, they are done slightly differently, right? Like the games are played slightly differently. You cannot play the game the same way on either side. However, it doesn't mean that they're impossible to learn. Like just like every agent who comes into residential real estate, you got to figure it out. And most of the time, you don't know how it works either, right? Commercial's the same game. And what's interesting is that I was mainly focused on expireds, canceled, circle prospecting. For sale by owners, I'm a huge prospecting agent, and I feel like the people who have that same mentality, where you're a beast on the phone or capable of becoming one, or like you're committed to at least doing all the prospecting necessary. I just took that same mentality and threw it into commercial real estate where the price points were higher, and seemingly more open to conversation, shockingly enough, because everybody's an investor and likes to chat. And so I feel like if you have that type of mentality and you just plug it into a vehicle where the dollars are a lot higher, you have an incredible opportunity to make 2 or 3 or 4x the amount of money you're making now by doing not that drastic of a different thing.
Yeah, 100%. And I'd love for you to maybe talk about that just for a second, is those differences. Like in very layman's terms, what are some of the critical differences from like a residential transaction and a commercial transaction before we start diving into what you just touched on, which is how to actually start to break into that space?
Sure. So let's break down what residential is, right? You got to lead generate. And then from that lead generation, you're trying to set up an appointment, and then you try to take a listing. That's essentially the name of the game. If you want to be a top tier agent, you got to get a bunch of listings. The more listings you have, the more likely you're going to make a lot of money, right? And then once you take that listing, you're going to negotiate it. Most of the time, you're not representing both sides. You're kind of hoping, and by putting it on the market appropriately priced, you're hoping somebody else has a buyer. You negotiate the deal. It goes to closing. Okay. Now, in the commercial world, it's similar, but not the same. So in commercial, lead generation is essentially the same, right? We're doing the same game. And the difference comes when once you've gotten that lead, instead of trying to set an appointment to immediately list it for sale, what we do is we specifically generate that opportunity, and then we understand the process around finding a buyer for that deal without putting it on the market. Okay, so it's a lot of exclusivity, and whoever controls the most deal flow and the best quality deals makes the most money in this game. It's not about listings. Actually, what's interesting is that majority of commercial deals are done off market, right? Because, we kind of look at it from the lens of an investor. If you're an agent and understand how an investor looks at a deal and that property makes a lot of sense, like the numbers make sense, and you already have the buyer pool, why would you list it for sale? There's almost no benefit, right? So what we do is that when we come across a good opportunity, we go out to our buyers that we've generated, and we put that deal in front of them exclusively off market, and we get a bunch of offers on that property, put the deal together, negotiate it. We get both sides of that deal, and we're averaging 4, 5, and 6% commission almost every single time. And then we just go through the normal transaction process from there, which, by the way, is almost identical, minus the due diligence items, which is a little bit more complicated, not drastically, but it's a lot more, confirming the numbers, the income, all the documentation to prove it. But the inspection process is relatively the same.
Yeah, 100%. And before, just a quick question before I start kind of diving a little bit deeper, how long did it take you to go from being a residential agent to full tilt commercial? Like, what does that transitionary phase look like? What was that for you?
Yeah, no, again, mind you, I'm selling over 100 homes a year at this point when I get referred that first commercial deal. So like I had a lifestyle I liked. I had, I liked, the not only the lifestyle, but I had staff and all this other stuff. So I couldn't just transition and pivot, immediately and go cold turkey, zero residential. So what I've learned and what we teach is a lot of focus on commercial 1 day a week. And do not change that philosophy until you've closed a deal or two in commercial. Then you can go 2 days a week commercial and then the rest residential. Because it's like you have a faucet that's on and pouring out cash, right? You don't want to just shut the faucet off, right? So for me, it took probably in the vicinity of around 2-ish years to go full-blown commercial. And I was referring out all the residential, where even today I still do that. We still come across, lots of residential opportunities. So I might as well close them. We just refer it out to the team. But for somebody, if you're doing full-blown residential, start with 1 day a week, close a deal, go to 2 days a week, close another deal or two, go to 3 days a week, right? Don't ever stop cold turkey.
Yeah, for sure. And so now kind of unpacking what you talked about when it comes to the differences, I know that there's going to be some people listening and saying, okay, well, who do I prospect? Because with residential, it's easy. You prospect everyone that has a home. So first, who do I prospect? And then the other, I know, kind of thought is going to be, well, I don't have a buyer's pool. Like, you've got a buyer's pool. How do I get in front of people? So what is that like in terms of first breaking into that space? Like, who do I prospect? And then once I start to find those deals, how do I start to kind of amalgamate that buyer's pool to be able to do some of these off-market transactions?
Yeah. So, first off, just realize that like anytime you're starting a business, obviously there's going to be a lag time of how long it takes you to build this type of stuff up, but it doesn't have need to be forever, right? So if you're looking at this from a lens of like, first off, how do we generate opportunities? Pretty simply put, a lot of what we do and how I started was a lot of quote circle prospecting. Okay. So you target a certain area and a specific asset class, which you can use softwares like CoStar, Reonomy, and Crexy. These are, call it the core three that you can look for contact information. Reonomy and Crexy are majority, the contact information is a little bit better. CoStar is a little bit better for for property detail. So you start there, you pull a list, right? It doesn't matter where you live, wherever you live, you do a 10-mile radius, you do your county, you do your city, whichever one you want to choose, and you choose one specific asset class. Okay. You pull that list and you just circle prospect, just like you would in residential. Think about it. If you're calling up a homeowner from circle prospecting a neighborhood, hey, Bob, it's Henry with XYZ Brokerage. How you doing today? Doing great. I just wanted to give you a quick call because I have a client who's looking in your neighborhood, and I was just curious if you'd be totally against the idea of selling. Okay. Just like in residential, you do the same thing in commercial. Hey, Bob, it's Henry with XYZ Commercial Brokerage. How you doing? Great, whatever. Look, I was giving you a call because I have a client who's going through a 1031 exchange, and they're looking to buy another asset similar to the one here at 123 Main Street, and I was curious if you'd be totally against the idea of selling it. Very simple, right? Same exact type of circle prospecting script, and we like to make it very easy, okay? Now, obviously, they're going to give you, they're going to respond. You're going to have to handle objections. I literally have a free script book. It literally walks you through every single question you could possibly ask, all the objection handlers. It's all there. Then once you've generated that opportunity, like you said, how do you generate a buyer? It's actually amazing that it's actually 10 times easier to do it in commercial than it is residential. Okay, because think about it. In residential, how do you find a buyer? Well, you got to market the property and hope somebody clicks on it and inquires. Okay, because you can't there's no circle prospecting for buyers. That doesn't make any sense, right? You got to hold an open house most of the time. Someone's got to come to you. In commercial, it's actually 10 times easier. You literally can just find out who has bought a property similar to the one you're trying to sell within the last year or two in that specific geographic area. And there's typically plenty of them to call, right? So imagine if you find whether it's a multifamily building, a hotel, an industrial building, a shop center, it could be literally anything. You just look up that specific type of property in that specific geographic location, pull everything that is sold in the last 2 years, and you call up these people who've just bought something, because if they bought something in that area, they're probably going to be okay with buying another, right? And obviously, if they own lots of properties, it's an even higher likelihood that they'll buy another one, right? So and you just do the reverse script that you just talked about, which is you call them up and you say, hey, Bob, it's Henry with XYZ Commercial Brokerage. How you doing today? Great. And you say, hey, I saw you bought a property at 127 Main Street, and I was just curious if I came across an interesting opportunity, would you be open to buying another one, right? And that's it. And then some people are going to say yes, some people are going to say no, and you slowly build out this buyers list and vet them out, because then all of a sudden, once you come across another opportunity in that local market, you're going to be like, oh, that's right, Bob buys in this area. Let me bring this deal to Bob.
Yeah. And one of the things that I love, and I'm sure that you experience this all the time, is on the residential side, as you alluded to, it's so much harder to find a buyer because buyers are emotional. And so when you're looking at residential, they have to like walk into that home, feel like it's home, absolutely love it, the smell, the look, the all these little details, and it's for the most part a purely emotional experience.
100%.
Whereas with resident or with commercial, it's usually a mathematical transaction where it's okay, if the numbers make sense for this type of investor or buyer, they're going to make it work, right? Like it's a
Yeah.
completely different thought process that kind of allows it to be a much more simple opportunity to find buyers. Would you agree?
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like the cool part about it is like obviously as an investor myself, it's like I'm looking for specific ways that I can make money, right? The majority
Yeah.
of deals that are being sold are really either being sold to an owner occupant, someone who's looking to buy and then operate their business there, or to buy it for rental purposes and make money, right? So as long as it can make money, right? And majority of the time, as long as it can make money, you will have a very high likelihood of selling it, right? So it's, if once you understand how to underwrite and evaluate properties and get a gauge of can this property make somebody money, the answer is yes. You have a very high likelihood of selling it, right?
Yeah.
Where in residential, you're still always going to hope and pray that somebody can make sense of this property, this location. Can they fall in love with this property with all these other things that are going on, right? You're kind of hoping and praying that there's going to be somebody there. But I know for an absolute fact that if this property makes money, I will sell it. And it's hard to ever have that confidence other than like, hey, I'm pretty sure I can sell it, right? Based on my previous experiences. It's a very different
Yeah.
game.
Completely agreeing. And so now one of the things that I'm curious about, you're active on social media and you've been able to build a very credible, recognized brand. And this is always a dilemma that agents face, especially when either breaking into a new class like commercial or just simply breaking into a new niche. Is you've got most agents, they've been posting residential content on Instagram, for example, or on YouTube, and now they're considering adding in commercial. And the thought process and the concern is always, well, if I start talking about that, these people aren't going to work with me. And so I'd love to get your take on how you were able to navigate that transition and what type of content you started to put out and how you started to build a brand within the commercial space.
Yeah, so I'll take a page out of Gary Vaynerchuk's book. I think talking about documenting the journey is really important, right? Like not trying to talk from hyperbole, but talking about like just documenting, like, hey, I just came across this interesting deal, right? A friend of mine literally what happened to me. I was referred a commercial property. I'd never sold a commercial property, and my friend referred me somebody who wanted to sell a larger multifamily building, and he knew that I had done a very good job with a lot of smaller multis. I did like, again, I specialized in investments, basically single family rentals and flips, and two families, three families, four families, right? That was like 70% of my business. So when you're trying to then break into a new niche or anything, I would just talk about the documentation, document what you're doing and how you're going through it and everything that's going on with the property, right? And the more you document versus like coming up from hyperbole, I think people can relate to that more than you saying like, hey, I'm now this new professional in this new thing, right? Also, I'm a big fan of leverage where like the cool thing is if you hypothetically work with somebody like myself, who's been a part of almost $1 billion worth of commercial deals, right? Brings more credibility than you going into something you've never done. Just like hypothetically, if I was going to go try to list a $50 million luxury home, right? I've never done that. I would probably want to go find, one of the top players that I know in that market to come along with me where I can buy their credibility, right? And borrow their credibility on that opportunity. So anytime you're going into it, it's like, look, by the way, anytime you start anything new, you're going to be a little bit, it's normal to feel like a rookie, right? Super normal. And I think that like the more you try to pretend, the more it hurts you in this industry.
Yeah, I agree. And that's, really the only shortcut to success that agents are seemingly always searching for is being able to align with people that have been there, done that, gone through all the mistakes, made all the, had all the wasted money and know exactly what to do straight out the gate and be able to,
Right.
shorten that learning curve. And so, something that I'm curious about is, 2026 and beyond. You've kind of touched on a little bit different asset classes. And so if somebody was listening to this and saying, okay, I'd like it, clearly it sounds pretty good. You're pretty much getting, 10 times the commission check for, sometimes 10 times easier to be able to find buyers as you start to break into this. Are there specific asset classes, either A, that you believe are the easiest to focus on in the beginning, or B, are there any asset classes going, 2026 and beyond that you believe are ripe for disruption or big opportunities to keep in mind?
Okay, so what's interesting about commercial is that it's very location dependent. Okay, where obviously with houses you're gonna be like, I'm gonna sell a house anywhere, right? In commercial, hypothetically, depending on your geographic location, there actually might be very few transactions of a specific asset class in your area. Okay, so as an example, working with somebody who was doing office sales, office building sales. Okay, in his geographic location, we looked up all of the office building sales, right, in the last 12 or 24 months, right? Because even if you're trying to get like 1 or 2% market share, like you're never going to get 100% of it, but you were trying to grab a couple percentage points. But there was like 13 sales in 2 years, right? Like even if you had 100% market share, I mean, there just isn't enough for you to make a ton of money. Where like we looked at multifamily and there was like 700 sales, right, per year. So it's like, okay, well, first off, for your geographic location, figure out where there's enough of a market for you to grab a few percentage points and still make decent money, right? So if there's anything less than really like, maybe 3 or 4 or 500 transactions a year in that specific asset class, it might be it might be detrimental to your business to choose that asset class to start to focus on. Okay. Now, also in the commercial world, obviously, just like residential, you're kind of dictated to interest rates, but you're also there's a few other things that can influence it, right? The economy plays a huge role in a lot of different aspects of commercial, right? Residential, it's not really the same. Population growth is population growth, right? And as well as household income averages, right? So in commercial, during COVID, all of a sudden, you had people where like they didn't even go to an office anymore, and office prices dropped in some areas 90%, right? So if you were an office leasing broker, you didn't have a job. There was no job to be had. Nobody was leasing office, right? So it's being cautious. Like as an example for me, I like to focus on the core three, which is either multifamily, shopping centers like retail and shopping centers, and industrial warehouses. Those are the core three that I believe in the vast majority of areas, you're going to have at least the highest likelihood of seeing success starting out. Okay. Where most residential agents also go wrong is that they go from residential houses into like development, which I'm not saying you can't make money in development, but the biggest con with development is that it takes insanely long to close. Right. So like all of a sudden you're like, oh man, I got this $3 million development deal. This could be really lucrative. And then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, our closing time frame based on, contingent upon approvals is 2 years. Right. It's like, I don't know about you, but I probably prefer not to get paid in 2 years. I want to get paid today. Right. So it's one of those things where I like existing product, simple, easy, nothing too extraneous where like, look, we've sold everything from gas stations, car washes last week, last month we sold 2 hotels. So we've sold everything, and it's always been the easiest when it's just clean and simple, multifamily, shopping centers, or industrial buildings.
Yeah, that's makes complete sense. And so here's an interesting thing that I'm curious about too. Before getting into some of the things that I think maybe people should avoid or mistakes that you've experienced. You're down here in Miami, but you're from New Jersey, and you're still operating business. So what has that been like for you? And how have you been able to navigate flexibility, distance, and being able to continue to build such a massive business while still being able to capitalize on that initial market where you built your brand in?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I mean, I want to give a lot of credit to my team because my team does an unbelievable job. Like we built out we have some great players and some good systems, and that will always take the cake and take the most credit. However, it's also important for people to realize, like, I was terrified to move down to Florida because I have rarely ever seen somebody move 1,000 miles away from where they sell real estate and then continue to do very well. Okay. So still, because the majority of my business is still in New Jersey, it's definitely a little bit of a weird dynamic. However, the cool thing about commercial, like as an example, I just closed a deal in New York. It was a smaller deal, a little under $2 million, but I closed it in New York. I'm not licensed in New York, but with commercial and the portability maps that we have with EXP, as an example, I was able to put that deal underneath my broker's license in New York. Okay, shout out Jay, you're the man, right? So put it underneath his license, and we made 100% commission in New York, and it never hit the market. I'm not licensed in New York, right? So like we're able to sell deals in other states that I'm not even licensed in. So it really actually doesn't matter where you're geographically located, where you live, and you still have the capability with the right systems and processes and people that you can count on, right, to sell real estate all over. So definitely it was very terrified in the beginning, and I flew back, twice a month at the very beginning, and now it's basically once a month because I love hanging out with my team, right? But it's one of those things where when you actually can understand the leverage that it allows you, where like you imagine being able to travel all the time and things are still getting done while you're away. I mean, I never thought I would ever live that life, and it's amazing to do so.
Yeah, that's so cool. And just being able to, again, create more leverage of your business in your time. And I think that's the name of the game here is, you look at how you can scale your business. It's either close more deals, get more repeat clients, or increase the price point. And the easiest way to do it with less work is exponentially increase the price point.
Yeah.
And that's, commercial lends itself exactly to that. And so, I'm really curious as to what are some of the critical mistakes that either you made or that you believe people should avoid when either A, people are saying, I'm new, I'm going straight to commercial, or B, I'm residential, I want to transition. What are some of the things that people need to look out for, knowing that it is a little bit of a different ball game, to make sure they avoid some of the common pitfalls that you see?
Yeah. Okay. Number one, biggest thing to keep in mind is most agents in general, I don't care if you're resi to commercial or brand new commercial, anyways, everyone makes this mistake, which is you spend too much time on a deal that actually is not going to sell. Okay. So biggest mistake I see, because all the time I see agents, and especially because they reach out to me all the time, where they're like, hey, I've got this deal. What do you think about it? Right. Well, first off, the majority of the time when they say, what do you think? Clearly to me, it's like, you don't know how to evaluate it because you would know if it's, you don't need to count on me. But if you send it, I've reviewed these deals. A lot of time they're drastically overpriced. And then all of a sudden, I tell them this up front. And then a month or two or three later, they reach back out to me like, hey, I'm still trying to sell this deal and I'm having some difficulties. And I'm like, I told you would have difficulties 90 days ago. Right? Instead of just going and finding more people who are actually serious about selling and willing to sell for a fair, reasonable price, which is what you should do, they spend way too much time on people who are not motivated and probably are never going to sell. Okay. Number one, biggest one. Number two is also people get into the commercial real estate industry and they think they're going to close a deal like this because maybe they had some decent success in residential. Commercial's not like that. Because even if you're a killer and you come into the commercial world, it still might take you 6 or 12 months to close your first deal. Even if you're a killer, just because you have to build out some systems. Like it really depends on the deals. And like I've had people who are, got quote unquote a little lucky because based on some of the things that they've called, right, and plugging into a great team like ours, and they closed 7 deals their first year. That's not normal, right? I mean, that's like in residential closing like 30 deals or 40 deals your first year. That's not normal, right? The majority of the time people are closing like 1, maybe 2 deals within their first 12 months. And it's really in their like 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th month, right? So coming into this world, you must have an expectation of like, hey, maybe having a part-time job at night, maybe selling residential houses, a couple days a week and doing commercial part-time, right? Like that's all totally okay, right? Because it will take you more time than you realize to start closing commercial deals. And I'll say this last one, okay? Huge pet peeve of mine, by the way, huge pet peeve is I despise when agents do this because it ends up coming to me. But like when they bring a deal to me and they're not direct to seller, you as an agent do not have any control if you are not direct to seller and or direct to buyer. You must be direct on one side. The daisy chain nonsense is unbelievable in the commercial real estate business, right? Because a lot of stuff is off market. So it's quote unquote like pocket listings type of mentality, right? The problem is like if you're an agent who is dependent on other agents to bring you deals or bring you buyers, that is a horrible position to be in. because then you are relying on other people to put food on your table. I will never do that, ever. Right? I will exhaust literally when we're direct to seller. By the way, the only time I will ever bring in another agent is to help sell one of our deals. Right? Like if I've exhausted every one of my buyers and none of them want it, period, and which means, by the way, it's a little bit overpriced. Okay, we'll put it on the market and we'll be open to the idea of working with other brokers. But I will never, never ever will I go to, grab a buyer and try to reach out to some other people like, hey, do you have anything? I'll just go find it myself. Right? You always to have the highest likelihood of making great money, direct to seller, direct to buyer, no middleman.
Yeah,
You avoid those three.
those are all awesome.
Okay.
I love it, dude. And on the notice systems, because you touched on that, and I think that's the most critical thing is being able to have that shortcut to success. I'd love to really better understand, why is somebody in commercial did you decide to come over to EXP? Some people don't even know EXP as a commercial division, let alone what can people expect when, now you and I can leverage co-sponsorship and, people can partner with both of us. What can people expect when partnering with you to be able to help be on that fast track to success in the commercial space?
Yeah, I mean, look, what's interesting first and foremost, before I even dive into any, split benefits or all this other stuff, because it definitely has an insane amount of benefits. The fact of being able to co-sponsor and work with both of us is unbelievable. Okay, I hope people realize that to be able to work with both of us at such a high level is incredible. Like the value there alone is immense. And when you're with EXP Commercial, which I've been a part of it for a number of years now, very one of the original agents who came over to EXP Commercial. And by the way, at EXP Realty, you are still able to sell commercial real estate. I want to be very clear. You can do both when you're a part of Realty. If you're part of EXP Commercial, you can only sell commercial deals. You legally cannot sell any residential houses. So if you're doing any residential deals at all and you don't plan on referring them out, you must be at EXP Realty. Okay. But at EXP Commercial, what I loved is a few things. Number one, the ability to be able to be my own boss and choose the asset classes I desire, which might be shocking to some of you, but if you're a commercial agent at your core and you've been in commercial real estate for a long time, most brokerages hold you hostage to a geographic location and to an asset class choice. They go, you are only this, and you can only sell this, and anything outside of this scope, you must refer out. And which to me makes no sense. We sell everything. I'm an investment sales broker. If it makes money, I sell it. And I'm able to prospect anywhere I want to, right? And I love that freedom. Beyond the fact that the splits are basically are very similar to EXP Realty, where a normal commercial real estate brokerage is a normal 50-50, right? Normal at a brokerage is 50-50. I work with a friend, I coach a friend of mine. Guy makes $1 million a year. Very successful guy. Crushes it. He's at a brokerage where he pays 30% to the house, right? And that's a good split in commercial with no cap. $300,000 a year to the brokerage. I would throw up I almost threw up in my mouth, just now thinking about it. The first time I talked to him, I was like mind blown. Like, how on planet Earth can you make sense of spending $300,000 a year when they don't provide you almost anything? And this is a very common occurrence in the commercial real estate business, right? On top of all that, the fact that you can sell anywhere across state lines is one of the other reasons for me. I was like, this is a power move, because in Realty, like EXP Realty, they are very strict, which makes sense because if you're not licensed in a certain area, you can't sell there, right? However, with commercial, it's a lot more flexible with the portability map, where you can sell just about anywhere utilizing the brokerage's licenses. Right. So for me, it's like I have complete freedom, the best splits you could possibly imagine, the ability to work with top people all across the country collaboratively. And I have, people like you that I can leverage, it's like there is an insurmountable amount of value, right, for someone to consider it.
100%. And so on that note, and again, it's just crazy when I hear some of those splits of the average traditional commercial brokerage and that people just accept that because they think it's the status quo or the norm. again, what can people expect when partnering with you? I know that you've got an incredible team, you've got massive opportunities, you've got a big pipeline, and it's so advantageous. Again, coaching and mentorship, right? Being able to align with people that know exactly what works right now, how to get started today on the right path. When people decide to reach out to you, because they're going to be able to click the link in the description, book a chat with you, and talk about partnering with us, what can they expect when aligning with you to kind of begin or continue that transition into a resi-merchal agent or a full tilt commercial agent?
Yeah, so imagine having me in your back pocket anytime you come across a commercial deal to help you navigate the entire transaction from start to finish. Avoid the idea of spending too much time on somebody who's not interested in selling. Knowing very quickly, is this going to be not only something that might make us money, but exactly the path to a transaction closing, right? And having me be able to help you navigate through the entire process of negotiating the deal, getting it to a closing table, and earning sometimes 4, 5, and 6% commission checks on multi million dollar deals, right? So if someone would find that valuable, I would think it would be a good thing to do is reach out in some capacity, right? Like as an example, we've had coaching student people who come to us through EXP. And they come to us and they go, hey, I have this deal, or I have this buyer, I have this seller. What do I do? Okay. And they come to us. And as an example, we had this individual who came to me last year, and he said, hey, I have an amazing buyer, right? It was an out of the country buyer. They were looking to buy along the East Coast, and they had basically an unlimited budget. Okay. There's like, hey, I came across this gold mine of a buyer. Amazing opportunity, by the way. Obviously, outside of the country buyer, foreign money, they need to place tens of millions of dollars. So I was like, okay, this is what you're going to do. I gave him X, Y, Z to focus on. Like, this is the steps. This is all you're going to do, and you're going to focus on it. He ended up finding a deal for over $20 million. I helped him negotiate the entire deal. We closed out before the end of the year because we got tight on time frames, but that was a multi six-figure commission check that they earned, right? Where anybody can have that kind of same type of experience where, basically you can tag me in, you and I are going to fight together and we can work together on getting these deals closed.
Yeah, that's huge. Especially, we're in an industry that's getting disrupted. You have artificial intelligence, you have the economy, you have so much, um, so much going on right now that a lot of people don't know how to navigate. And in my opinion, as things continue to change, people are going to value, and they already show this, is that people are valuing specialists more than generalists. And having a niche, being able to tap into something, build a brand around something, is going to be the superpower of the future. And commercial is a major opportunity for that, again, not many people are tapping into effectively like you are. And so, guys, again, I'm going to link all of Henry's content below, as well as his calendar. Feel free to click that link in the description and have an open conversation. I always like to say the most expensive thing you can own is a closed mind. If you didn't have the year that you were expecting this year, which the majority of agents didn't, this could be the breakthrough opportunity that you needed in order to get to that next level, align with both of us, and be on the fast track to success. So, Henry, again, dude, thank you so much for sharing your entire blueprint of how to get started in commercial.
Thank you, brother, for having me. Appreciate it.
You bet, man. All right, guys, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, click those links in the description. We'll see you in the next one.